the future of grey market licensing in Asia and beyond.
Hello everyone. So let's get going. We have 15 minutes. That's the topic. That is me, 20 years in the industry. Worked for companies in Europe and Asia, so hopefully I know what I'm talking about, because I have done licenses from multiple angles, set up and run them. I work for Manavia in the Isle of Man, which is one of the oldest corporate service providers, goes way back to the early days of online gambling. We did some of the first ever licenses. And half the time in the Isle of Man, half the time I'm based here in Manila. In fact, that picture there is me cycling to the first SiGMA Asia last year. So that's, me. Let's get into it. And let's start by telling you that nobody needs a license. Until you want to get banking, you want to deal with suppliers, you want to sponsor anything, you want to do many, many more things. And the time and the world is changing. And, if you want to do these things, you need to prove who you are. The way I always put it is, if really you need a sales pitch for a license these days is, you do not buy a license, you buy legitimacy. And I mean that in the most possible positive way. This is what the Rolls-Royce of grey market licenses at the moment looks like. And I think few people will disagree that the Isle of Man license is, the best one you can get. Of course, if you're from Malta, you may disagree. But this is what legitimacy in a pre-regulated world at the highest level looks like. This was actually one I picked up myself and took a picture. We do loads of those. When you get a license, you put a piece of paper on your wall, but you prove to everyone you deal with, to your players, to your bank, to your games providers, that you're a real company, you hold yourself to certain rules. In the Isle of Man, you hold yourself to the highest regard. You are crime-free, you comply with money laundering, you make the lawyers and the banks feel comfortable. And those are the people that are most important to feel comfortable when they deal with you. So really, you don't buy a license, you buy legitimacy. So congratulations, being here today and watching this. The fact that you're interested in this, may you be here today in person, or when you watch this later, when they put up the video, means you want to do the right thing. Because any license is better than no license. That's a simple rule, okay? The fact that you want to do something, you want to do the right thing, that's perfect. That's wonderful, I love it. And so will the suppliers, for example. So a quick look in the background, I'm sure you all know this. What actually is grey market licensing? And it's a weird world if you think about it, because it's, in a nutshell, it is the activity of obtaining a gambling license or gaming license. We used to call it online gambling 20 years ago. Now we call it e-gaming. It's a much prettier term, isn't it? You obtain a license in one location to target players in another location where there is no specific license in place to do what you want to do. So these grey market, or as we call them now, pre-regulated, and there's a clue in the name, I'll come to that in a minute, they enable you to do that. They fill a gap, if you want, and they have filled this gap for many, many years. We're looking at about 30 years now, which sounds a lot, is actually a short period of time. This industry has grown phenomenally. When I first came to Manila in 2011, we actually kind of started all these kind of events that you hear. Not blowing my own trumpet, but back then it was a very closed world. And we started networking events and had some drinks, and then, conferences grew out of it, and now we have opened up. And look around you. Everyone here can now be open. Everyone here can, come here, do business. Why? Because you have the regulatory background, the legitimacy through licensing that says you're legit people who can openly do business. You need your license. Is there a list? This is one of the most common questions I get asked, and I get emails all the time. Frank, can you get me a list of all the grey market countries? If I get a Curaçao, if I get an Isle of Man, I get a Malta license, who can I target? Give me the list. Yes and no. Because which countries you can target really depends which lawyer you're asking. For example, in many jurisdictions, the Isle of Man included, the responsibility is on you to make sure that what you're doing is legal. So you go to a lawyer, and we can help you with that, for example, to get a legal opinion. And we will tell you, okay, you want to target Japan, very popular country. Well, technically there are laws in Japan that say this, but practically there are laws that say you can do certain things because you're not in Japan. And every country is different, and this is very, very dynamic. This changes all the time. So I could give you a list now. I have one on my laptop if you want it, but it may be outdated tomorrow because someone's doing something different again. So yes and no, and it really depends. It also depends greatly on your risk appetite. If you want to still target that big country starting with C up north from here, if you're brave enough, there's probably a way to do it. Are you brave enough? That is a decision you have to take. That is why we use, pretty much everyone now, what we call the risk-based approach. The regulator will give you enough rope to run, but if you run too fast, you may hang yourself. So, that's how it works. That's how this world works. So you need to make sure what you do is legal within the gray market scenario, and you need the lawyer to tell you so. In the good old days, and we're talking 15, 20 years, most regions were great. It was beautiful. You could target the whole of Europe, the whole of Asia. LATAM was like, LATAM didn't really feature actually, but it was free for all. It was easy to do business. Everyone was happy. You either had a higher level license, like Malta, Isle of Man, Gibraltar, those of you remember, or Alderney, those of you remember, or your lower tier, like a Curaçao or 𝐂𝐭. You got your license, and the world was your oyster. You could do what you wanted. Those days are gone. Long, long, long gone. More and more countries all around the world are now bringing in their own licenses for a very simple reason. Governments have seen how much money there is in the industry. Look around you here. There's, I don't even see some of the biggest operators, but I see big guys here. There's billions of dollars in this room alone. There are billions, billions, billions more outside of it. People do not realize the size of the industry. Multiple governments now do. They are starting to bring in their licenses. Prime examples in Asia, probably most interest of you, of course, the Philippines recently is the absolute trailblazer. Chairman Tanko did a fantastic job with the PIGO rules to open Asia to this system of, hey, let's have a slice of that pie. When we were in London, when I interviewed the chairman there was a delegation from Cambodia there, and they were actually talking to him to learn how he does it because they want to do the same thing. Same with Thailand. You all read, if you read the magazine I write for, or SiGMA, or any of the others, you will have read that Thailand is opening up. They are putting integrated resorts in now. Online gaming will follow. Other countries in Asia, I'm already hearing they're doing the same because the governments see the money. Also, the good old days are gone because stricter AML rules now say these jurisdictions have to level up. There's a very prominent jurisdiction, the lady was here before, the prime example. You have to, even if you don't want to. If the country that more or less runs you, the Netherlands in their case, says up your game, you have no choice. So the whole world, our industry, if you like it or not, goes towards stricter regulation. It's really only a really good time for lawyers and compliance staff. If you're in any of those two fields, congratulations, you have a very good future ahead of you. And as some of these jurisdictions drop out or level up, a new breed of lower tier jurisdictions moves in to fill that gap. So current jurisdictions on the radar, this doesn't mean it's all of them. These are just the ones that we see to be most talked about, most relevant, most in demand, okay? So don't be offended if you're one of them not mentioned. On the tier one, it's really only the Isle of Man and Malta. And I don't want to upset the Malta guys. I know you're sponsoring it and everything. It's really only the Isle of Man at the moment. Primarily because they're quicker, but they're very, very strict now. So if you go for the Rolls-Royce, you can have an Isle of Man license in 3 months still. In Malta, I've heard and I've worked with people who say it's slower, but they're both the tier one. They're the Rolls-Royce options, right? Either Rolls-Royce or a Bentley. So if you want to be the highest level, you go for one of these two guys. We focus on Isle of Man because we know it's fast. On the lower tier, we are now seeing Anjuan. Many of you will have heard that name. Many of you will already have applied for a license there because it's relatively cheap. It's 17,000 euros, I believe, 2 weeks, bit of paperwork, happy days. Tubik has now done their first license. We've spoken to them, very interesting model, different model to Anjuan. Again, they're trying to fill a gap. Of course, 𝐂𝐭𝐡 is still around. And of course, the Philippines has opened up, or has been open for a long time with SESA and 𝐂𝐭. You can talk to them upstairs. They will offer you what are essentially grey market licenses. And now you're probably looking at this and you're going, hold on a second. What about Curaçao? And the by far most popular lower tier licensing jurisdiction is changing, which is what I said before. They're being forced to upgrade. It's not that they want to, but it's the right thing to do. So it's good. It's a good thing. And Curaçao's new rules will see it climb the ranks. And I truly believe this, even if Aydin might, think I'm based in the Isle of Man, I might be biased. I'm not. Because I truly think that Curaçao has a chance and is on the way to compete with the Maltas and the Isle of Mans and be on a tier 1. It will take some time, but they will be there. And that's a good thing, because that's where the whole industry is moving. It will be stricter and stricter and stricter, and if you're ahead of the curve, it's a good thing. So yeah, you will see Curaçao move from up and be a tier 1 in the future. I'm absolutely convinced. So what about that future then? Well, most countries, as I said, will have their own licenses, and that includes Asia. Cambodia, Thailand, Vietnam's looking at it. Japan is super keen, because they don't like the grey market operators. I know they don't like it, they hate it. There were actually Japanese police at ICE, as I'm sure most of you know. If you didn't know, you do know now. They were there playing clothes, logging around, because they want to change. They want to have their own rules, but they're very slow. So it's going to come. The whole of Asia will regulate, if you want it or not. This means we will move from a 1 or 2 grey market licenses to having a whole license portfolio. As I said, if you're in compliance, it's golden times for you ahead. For smaller operators, this is a problem. You will have to decide target markets, because you will not be able to target 20 markets with 20 different licenses. It's going to kill you. For big operators, the entains and the guys that focus on this, that's what they're going to do. They're going to have huge compliance. They already have huge compliance departments, license departments, and license portfolios. And you will go from licensing the activity, the .com, the go to this country, to licensing the actual products. In the Isle of Man, we do this with the software license. So you can do B2B in the Isle of Man without license, but if you get the license, you get on a nice little master list, which basically tells everyone in the world, look here, I'm playing with the big boys. I'm next to all the big names that have this. I'm legit. You can use me without further checks. That's where we're going. We're certifying the product. I predict a 3-tier future, which we kind of have already. There will always be unlicensed operators anywhere. And I really believe unlicensed doesn't necessarily mean bad. Everyone has to start somewhere. And if you build up a little business in Asia or anywhere, but it's mostly in Asia, with your mates, a little agent system, you're good at it, you're a bookie, you can't afford any license when you start. You have 50 quid in your pocket. So, it's not necessarily, it doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. It just means you have to start somewhere. There will always be unlicensed operators. There are still unlicensed crypto guys. There are still people who want to be anonymous. They will always exist. We will have the lower tiers, the Anjuans, the Tobiques, the other ones that are up and coming. There's a few interesting ones coming. And you will have the Rolls-Royce guys who are at the top, who want to create the right basis to go into whatever is left of the grey market, but who also want then to get the country-specific licenses. Because if you have a Malta or an Isle of Man already, and a country opens up, and you go to that country, and maybe that country limits the number of licenses, and you go there and say, I would like a license, and they go, who are you? And it's like, oh, I'm already Isle of Man and Malta license. I've held myself to the highest regard for the last 10 years. You're more likely to be entertained. It gives you a better chance in a regulated world. Think about that. Think about long term. And this is one of the last points, it's the long-term future. Grey market licensing, as we know it now, will disappear. Some say 5 years, some say 10 years. It's going to be gone, because every country in the world needs more money. LATAM is almost gone now. Europe, you can forget about it. Asia, as I said, is starting to clamp down. You will have to get a license for every country. It's not going to be feasible for all of you. But the big guys, you'll be laughing, because you can get bigger and bigger and bigger. But there will always be a dark fringe. There will always be the anonymous books, the unlicensed books, what we would then call illegal books, because there will always be an appetite for it. And the industry is so big. Even 0.5% of our whole industry is billions. So there will always be people. That really is, the future. The challenges that I see, you will have to look at regulating new things. How many of you, for example, have in your terms and conditions how you regulate AI? Can you shut a player down if he uses an AI bot or if he uses AI tech? Are you using AI? How are you using that with the player? And regulators have to get it right. As countries regulate, if you get it wrong, look at Germany. I'm from Germany, beautiful market, the biggest in Europe, massively profitable. Our politicians messed it up. Badly, badly, badly. The gaming companies want the license, they want to pay, they're happy to pay tax, they want to be legit. But if you create a licensing regime like Germany that makes it so difficult, you will fuel the black market. Don't do that. Get good consultants from the industry, get us to do it. And yes, operators have to get used to needing multiple licenses. There's no way around for you guys. That is your future, that is your challenge. So that's all I can give you for the current gray market. Basically, it won't be around in 10 years. If you want to learn more, that is me. I'm not really selling anything. If you have any questions for anything, please do contact me anytime. And yes, thank you for watching and being here, and I'll be around. Thank you.